Most men think that their wife's affection disappeared because she's intentionally withholding her love from them and they are being punished. But the truth is, she isn't doing that to you at all. And you have every ability to get her to be dying to give you love and affection again if you truly understood the reasons for her affection going away. So in today's video, I'm going to give you the 4 biggest reasons that your wife stopped being affectionate with you that most men completely misunderstand, and what you have to do if you want that closeness with her again. The first reason is that affection stopped feeling emotionally free and started feeling emotionally loaded and unnatural. When you're going through the normal ups and downs of a marriage and you start to notice the little things where she's being a little bit less affectionate, you really start to feel how that changes the overall environment with her. Now, in the back of your mind, you have that sense of something being a little bit off. So every hug you try to give her quietly carries an emotional question, basically asking like, are we okay? It feels very tentative. Or maybe when you do have those nicer moments that are becoming fewer and further between, those moments get turned into a conversation about how the relationship is. What happens is there's this constant leaking of emotional pressure, and she is far more attuned to that than most men realize. And eventually, affection starts feeling emotionally expensive for her. That phrase matters, emotionally expensive, because now every one of those moments of closeness that are already fleeting in how often they appear feels like it carries responsibility with it. You don't even have to say it to her directly, but the problem is it ends up being those moments where you can't help yourself but think, hey, she's showing me something positive, so now I should really try to get that reassurance from her. And this is where many men accidentally create the exact opposite dynamic they want, because the more distance they feel and the less positive opportunities they see, the more emotionally focused they become on trying to get that outcome from her. And if they see signs that aren't what they want, it obviously becomes an internal panic. There's a 0% chance that she will naturally soften when she's feeling emotionally responsible for how you are behaving. You can be incredibly nice while still radiating anxiety, neediness, fear, and emotional dependence underneath it all. And that is the only thing that will actually register with her. This is why affection starts feeling like a chore in struggling marriages. A lot of women actually describe this exact feeling in private. They'll tell their mom or their sister or friends that they feel guilty or they feel bad because they know you want more from her. So the affection starts being tied to this emotional responsibility. That pressure builds in the background, so she pulls away and creates that breathing room emotionally. Affection grows best in emotional freedom, not feeling of obligation. And that leads us into reason number 2. The relationship stopped feeling emotionally relaxing. This is different from pressure. This is about emotional tension becoming the permanent atmosphere of the relationship. A lot of marriages slowly lose emotional relaxation. Everything starts to feel very serious and very careful, and eventually the relationship stops feeling like a place where she can emotionally exhale. Honestly, I had absolutely no concept of what safety was when I finally had enough of my decade-long heartbreak, and I decided I should start figuring out what mistakes I was making. Whenever I heard that she has to feel safe emotionally, I always just thought it meant don't be abusive, obviously, and don't yell, and just be that good guy, which for me often was way too many times morphed into being the nice guy. But emotional safety is much deeper than that. It is nervous system level. Can she emotionally unclench around you? Can she simply exist around you without feeling emotional tension kind of underneath every action and activity? Or does every interaction quietly feel connected to the state of the marriage, your emotional stability, and where she never feels heard or understood when trying to speak how she feels to you? Like I said in reason number 1, where affection grows best in emotional freedom, it also thrives in emotional relaxation, not emotional analysis. And this is where a lot of men unintentionally create tension through overfocus. You care deeply about making things right. So you try to work on the relationship with her by getting her into more conversations and kind of explaining your side of things. And really, you just kind of keep piling on the emotional seriousness. So because of that exhaustion, the warmth from her starts to disappear naturally. Not because she's like intentionally thinking, I don't want to give him affection anymore. And it can be very confusing as a man, because I know for me in some of my relationships where we weren't even fighting at all. So it was very confusing that the kind of affection was going away. So in my brain, it was an easy fix. Like, hey, we have a pretty good relationship. We don't fight. Let's just be more affectionate with each other. I did not understand how beneath the surface and quiet the emotional shutting down process is for women, and how it can really go on for a long period of time unnoticed. Trying to turn that around quickly by pushing more emotionally on her, thinking you can kind of just manufacture affection, it doesn't work. Take it from me. There cannot be that affection without the relaxation and the emotional safety. The third reason your wife may have stopped being affectionate is because the relationship slowly became transactional. It often looks like you are doing more to be helpful around the house, but underneath that effort, you have this emotional contract that's forming. And that energy kind of feels like this: I'm doing all of this stuff, so why am I not getting affection? And internally, because you're not seeing that kind of reward, if you will, for all the effort you're putting in, there's resentment that starts to build underneath that effort. And that resentment starts to rear its ugly head in subtle ways, but mainly through disappointment. You may throw in some passive comments to try and get that affection, or have mood shifts and some withdrawal. All that does is make her feel like the relationship isn't open and natural. So all your interactions carry that invisible accounting attached to it. You basically have kind of a T account for your effort on the debit side, but you're not getting any affection credits on the credit side. So there's this feeling of like, after everything I do for you type of energy building where you have that resentment. The more you don't get that result from her, like you don't get any affection on the credit side of the T account, the more you start to create that unsafe environment through your resentment that seeps out. And the fourth reason your wife may have stopped being affectionate is because she stopped feeling emotional polarity in the relationship, also known as roommates. Affection doesn't only grow from safety, it grows from emotional contrast. And unfortunately, a lot of long-term relationships slowly drift into emotional sameness, whether it's because of complacency or long work hours or time dedicated to raising the kids. The relationship basically starts to drift into that roommate energy. You both get into management mode where you just spend time kind of hammering out logistics instead of hammering each other, which is really bad for your marriage and counteracting the stress of everyday life. When that affection and connection disappears, the relationship becomes entirely about problems, sad feelings, tasks, and basically survival. And the most common thing that happens is you unintentionally lose any polarity you had because you become consumed by the relationship emotionally, to the point where you hand over your leadership role piece by piece over time, because it makes more sense for you to sort of give in to her more, not rock the boat, and not have as much self-respect because you really just want to make her happy and you think that's going to kind of get that affection back. Your entire identity becomes wrapped around fixing the marriage. I've been there, so I know the logic of it. If we can kind of just be enough of the people pleaser, even if we're not thinking of it in that term, but if we just do what she wants, it's going to make everything better. Unfortunately, it does not work that way, especially when you give her what she wants, and it eradicates any self-respect or grounded masculine leader presence you had. Once she starts losing respect for you, the polarity is gone and the emotional connection starts to go with it. If you are a man who is focused on his direction in life and his purpose and live it in such a way that it's inviting for her to join you on that, you become so attractive in her eyes, and that's where she feels that connection and is kind of open to the affection again. You are being that man independent of what happens with the relationship. If you can't transform and grow to be that man, your chances are basically nil. When you combine that with learning how to give her that emotional safety, even marriages where you are separated or divorce papers have been served do have a strong chance of reconciliation. We will wrap this up and kind of put a bow on it in a moment. I just want to touch on the real truth about affection dissipating, and this is really the crux of your entire situation that you have to understand. The affection disappearing is usually not the beginning of the problem. It's not the first sign that everything isn't okay. The affection disappearing is really just the most noticeable symptom of the deeper issue of the emotional atmosphere the relationship has slowly become trapped inside. That is the emotional atmosphere of pressure, heaviness, loss of polarity, and emotional exhaustion, like I mentioned. But affection usually returns naturally when the emotional experience of the relationship changes first. Her emotional openness can absolutely return when the underlying emotional dynamic changes. There is nothing you can do to convince her, or even worse, manipulate your wife into loving you again. And if you want to continue learning how to rebuild emotional connection without becoming weak, needy, or manipulative, go check out my free Relationship Rebuild Masterclass. You're going to learn the true step-by-step process to regain that leadership and polarity in your relationship so she feels a different experience with you as a man. The one that is needed for affection to return, that is the experience she needs to have. And you have to start that with your own self-respect. So you can watch that masterclass for free by clicking the link in the pinned comment or description below. And if you want to know how to stay calm when you feel your wife pulling away, check out this next video right here.